This is KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guest today is Brian Glick from Revival Theater Company, a relatively new theater company in the Corridor area in season 2.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
And your upcoming production is called Violet. And this is you've done a remarkable job. I mean, the shows you've staged, some of them I've heard of, some of them I haven't. And I think that's part of your mission, right? Is to seek out maybe some things that are really good but just didn't catch fire like sometimes they do.
Yeah, we call them the rare gems. I mean, artistically, they're just these, solid pieces of work. But, it didn't sell tickets in the commercial theater, but it does here. And so it's cool to, give them life to a new audience here. And
so the upcoming show opening next week is Violet.
Yes.
Tell me what the history, before we talk about the show, tell me what the genesis of this is and why it's a rare gem.
So Violet was produced in the mid-90s with Playwrights Horizons, and it was an off-Broadway sort of piece, and in a small theater. And had about a 6-month run or so, small lifespan, and then nothing was ever heard of it until about 2 or 3 years ago. Encores at City Center, New York, who are known for reviving these shows that had very limited runs that nobody knows anything about, but have a great score and story, revived it for a day, for one evening, with Sutton Foster. And at the time, Sutton Foster was in a TV show called Bunheads, which people might be familiar with. And her producers came and saw her in the show and said, this needs to have a life again in the theater. And within a year, they moved that show to Broadway. It's pretty much the same show. And it ran for a little over a year.
It's just a matter of timing.
It is.
Sometimes,
it is.
And the right person seeing something and championing it.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, is Janine Tesori, who's just a force in the music industry right now, who just won the Tony for the new Broadway musical Fun Home, wrote this score. And at the time, she wasn't as well known. Right. And now she's written Totally Modern Millie and Shrek and Caroline Change. And so, her name has a lot of, precedence as well. So I think that helped.
People will a lot of times go back and say, well, what did you do?
Exactly.
What might I be able to pick up cheap?
Exactly, yeah.
From before you were big.
Yeah, exactly. So it's great that this kind of got a new life. And this Cameron, actually, Sullenberger went and saw it in New York. I was familiar with it, but never gave it much of a look. And then he went and saw it in New York with Sutton and said, this is something we got to do. And so here we are.
Okay, and as we said, it's musical.
That's right.
And what is it about?
So Violet is a story about a young girl who is facially scarred. Her dad is chopping wood, and the axe blade comes loose, comes back, hits her in the face. She gets sewn up by a doctor who's drunk at the time and has this disfigurement on her face that, is sort of the elephant in the room her whole life. People won't look at her. They treat her differently. They make fun of her. And this takes place in the 60s, mid-60s. And, of course, at that time, tent revivals were a big thing on TV evangelists. And she discovers this TV evangelist on TV and is certain that he will heal her. So she spends the course of her teens until she's an adult saving up money to take a cross-country bus trip across the South to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to find this TV evangelist that will heal her. And along the way, she meets these people on the bus who have stories of their own, lives of their own, but there's these two guys, Flick and Monty, who befriend her, and basically along the way sort of show her what a relationship is like, what a friendship can be, even with a disfigurement on the face. And so the story is really about who we are on the inside, that who we are on the inside makes us, and not who we are on the outside. And then she quickly discovers that this TV evangelist isn't going to be able to heal her scar. And that's extremely disappointing to her because she's put her whole life on this idea that he can make her look like the people in the magazines. And so it's a great story about the beauty within, about acceptance. We're all familiar with, today, Photoshop and wanting all those imperfections taken away. So we talk about how relevant it is as well. So it's a beautiful story. And what's interesting about it, the great parallel is it's in the 60s at the height of the civil rights movement. And Flick is an African-American man. So here's somebody who he's dealing with his imperfections as well in the 60s, that people look at him as a different person, and here's this girl with a scar who people look at differently as well. And so they sort of build this friendship because there's a lot of relatabilities between the two. So it's a great story. It's a beautiful story.
And as Violet, the great Angela Billman
Yes.
stars. And I don't think this is a spoiler, but you're actually playing her. The audience doesn't see the scar.
No, that's not giving anything away. I'm
Okay.
glad you brought that up. So there is no scar on her face. No one will come and see, some prosthetic piece on her face. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, in a 2-hour setting, if someone had something like that on their face, that's all we would stare at. And the story is actually, the antithesis of that. It's about how we should look at people for who they are, not for an imperfection that they have on the outside. So there's no scar. And some people kind of have an issue with that, but I think
Is that the way it's usually played, or is that a
that's the way
choice
it's
you guys-
usually played. In fact,
okay.
there's even a piece in the script that says, please do not, do that, because it takes away from the story. And when you go and see it, after 5 or 10 minutes, you'll forget about it. And, you'll get so involved in the story, you won't need that. So,
did Angela find that challenging?
It is challenging at first, because like the first rehearsal, it's like, okay, where's the scar going to be? Where do we imagine it? And so we decided through that, okay, this is what it looks like. This is how it feels when you touch your face. And so we just we learned to accept that it's there, and we believe through her body language and how she acts that this is something that's really there on her face, across her entire face. So it's not too much of a challenge. It's just, we talked about how there are moments in the show where people have to react to it, and that was hard at first because there's nothing there. So it's like we have to have an idea of what this looks like, and how do we react to that when we see someone with a disfigurement that we've never seen before. We kind of takes our breath away for a moment, and then how do we move on from that? So yeah, it was an interesting sort of development, that process.
Talking with Brian Glick from Revival Theater Company about the upcoming production of Violet, which is the weekend of the 25th, correct?
Yeah, next Thursday through Sunday at CSPS in downtown, or Nubo, I should say. Yeah, the other thing too that's interesting about this show is the score. I should mention this. We're set in the Deep South in the '60s, so the score ranges from bluegrass to blues to gospel to rock and roll. So if you have any interest in any kinds of that genre, I mean, you're getting, a full dose of those genres on stage, and the score is pretty cool.
And that's good to know too, because sometimes when people come in and they're talking about things that are dramatic or might be considered a downer, you're kind of going, oh. Gosh, I don't know if I want to go to the theater just to get even more depressed than I already am by my own awful life.
Yeah.
But when the music, like you said, encompasses all of these really uplifting genres, then that takes a lot of that away.
It does, and though the show has is moving and kind of has some dramatic a dramatic edge to it, it's also quite comedic. And the neat thing too about it is the band is on stage. They're very much part of the action.
Oh, who's in the band?
And so you have Gerard Estea playing, and Cameron Sullenberger on keys, and a bunch of other the Emma Conroy playing strings, and you have a great group of musicians on stage. And so when they get into this rock and roll and blues, it's quite fun to watch and be entertained by that aspect as well. So it's an enjoyable evening for anybody.
So the short answer is might sound like kind of a tough story to watch, but there's a lot of comedy.
Absolutely.
The music just rocks. It's just going to be a fun time for everybody.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a dogfight. When we did Dogfight, nobody knew anything about it, and we had people afterwards going, "Oh, I'm going to buy the recording." So I think there's something, at least we feel, intriguing about going to see something that you don't know anything about, and then leaving going, why do I not know anything about this show? So, that's fun. I mean, it's fun to see things we know, but it's also fun to see things we don't know sometimes.
The show is Violet. It's coming up next weekend at CSPS. How do people get tickets?
So, a couple different ways. They can go to legionarts.org, and there's a link there to buy the tickets directly. They're our box office. If you go to revivaltheatercompany.com, there's also a link that will just take you there. Social media links will take you there multiple ways, and I will say that tickets are cheaper in advance, so if they want to come, grab their tickets now.
And you've had a couple of sellouts in the past,
right.
too,
we know
so don't dawdle.
Yeah, and CSPS doesn't seat that many people, so we encourage people to get their tickets early, and yeah, it's exciting.
Brian Glick from Revival Theater Company. Good luck with it. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.